Our hearts clutch at a forfeited heavenly bliss. What something is forfeited, it's lost. It's able to become lost. So our hearts are clutching at this heavenly bliss that is lost. There is provender for the mind's satiety. Well, provender is food or provisions, and society is the gratification of desire. So there is provender for the mind's desire. And then he continues, there are thrills of the flesh, but not the soul's desire. Very, very powerful here. And we have to remember that before we have seen this chaos sorting itself into a world. It's a formation, but it's drifting in the void. There are imitations, apings of knowledge. There are unfinished arcs of power and these flamings of beauty, the reflexes of unity that are broken, love's reflexes especially. And we have this assemblage, this gathering of crude, tentative lives that are pieced into a checkered whole. There is no perfect answer to our hopes, he says. There are blind, voiceless doors, but they have no key. And thought climbs in vain and brings a borrowed light. And we are cheated by counterfeits sold to us in life's mart. And our hearts therefore clutch at this forfeited, lost heavenly bliss. And there is, of course, provender for the mind's society. There are always the thrills of the flesh, but not the soul's desire. And then he continues, here, even the highest rapture time can give. And we have discussed time before, I'm sure, is a mimicry of ungrasped beatitudes. Well, a mimicry is an imitation or a copy. So it's a mimicry of ungrasped beatitudes. It's even a mutilated statue of ecstasy. Well, a mutilated statue is a disfigured statue, a marred statue. And we have here a wounded happiness that cannot live, and a brief felicity, a brief happiness or bliss of mind or sense. Thrown by the world power to her body slave. Wow. So the world power throws this to her body slave. It throws this wounded happiness that cannot live. It throws this brief felicity of mind or sense. Or what else does it do? Or a simulacrum of enforced delight. The simulacrum is an image or a representation. So it's a superficial likeness of enforced delight in the seraglios of ignorance. Well, we have Mozart's great opera, and a seraglio is a harem, especially in a Muslim house or palace. And it's a place often in this palace where concubines and wives are secluded. And here we have the seraglios of ignorance. Wow. House or palace of ignorance. And have we done ignorance before?
We can do it again, I guess, even if you did.
I think we probably should. Who can do that for us? It's quite thorough, actually.
I can, if There's nobody else.
Ignorance is the absence of the divine eye of perception, which gives us the sight of the supramental truth. It is the non-perceiving principle in our consciousness, as opposed to the truth perceiving conscious vision and knowledge. Life divine. Have you found it yet?
Uh-huh. Ignorance is the consciousness of being in the successions of time, divided its knowledge by
Or
dwelling,
divided in its knowledge.
divided in its knowledge by dwelling in the moment, divided in its conception of self being by dwelling in the divisions of space and the relations of circumstances, self present in the multiple working of the unity. It is called the ignorance because it has put behind it the knowledge of unity, and by that very fact is unable to know truly or completely either itself or the world, either the transcendent or the universal reality, the life divine. Ignorance means avidya, the separative consciousness, and the egoistic mind and life that flow from it, and all that is natural to the separative consciousness and the egoistic mind and life. This ignorance is the result of a movement by which the cosmic intelligence separated itself from the light of the supermind, the divine gnosis, and lost the truth of being, truth of divine consciousness, truth of force and action, truth of Ananda. As a result, instead of a world of integral truth and divine harmony created in the light of the divine gnosis, we have a world founded on the part truths of an inferior cosmic intelligence, in which all is half truth, half error. All in the consciousness of this creation is either limited or else perverted by separation from the integral light. Hmm. Even the truth it perceives is only a half knowledge. Therefore, it is called the ignorance, the mother. All ignorance is a penumbra which environs an orb of knowledge, the life divine. This world is not really created by a blind force of nature. Even in the inconscient, the presence of the Supreme Truth is at work. There is a seeing power behind it, which acts infallibly, and the steps of the ignorance itself are guided even when they seem to stumble. For what we call the ignorance is a cloaked knowledge, a knowledge at work in a body, not its own, but moving towards its own supreme self discovery. Essays in philosophy and yoga. Knowledge is no doubt the knowledge of the One, the realization of the being. Ignorance is a self oblivion of being, the experience of separateness in the multiplicity, and a dwelling or circling in the ill understood maze of becomings, the life divine.
So Sri Aurobindo is not condemning ignorance here at all. He says that there is a guidance in the ignorance, even when when it seems to stumble. For what we call ignorance is a cloaked knowledge. And even though it is a knowledge at work in a body that's not its own, it is still moving towards its own supreme self-discovery. This is very important. And he says, of course, all in the consciousness of this creation is either limited or else perverted by separation from the integral light. Even the truth it perceives is only a half knowledge, and therefore it is called the ignorance. Would you like to add something to this, Vladimir?
Oh, it's profound in itself. These definitions are so deep. And I think about Auroville immediately that, self-assertion and righteousness and what people, exhibit nowadays, that they are right and we have to follow them. They start signing papers. It's the way of stumbling in a way through separateness and finding the way to the truth in a way. And sometimes the force has to be applied from both sides. This is the fastest way to resolve the disharmony in a way. I'm thinking philosophically now what is going to happen.
Yes, exactly. And you make a very strong point that there are often intransigent elements that are averse to change. And Mother said that 50,000 people were needed to make this Oroville a paradigm of the future. So 2,800 people are not going to do it. But there are those who are very satisfied with their house, their wife, their mistress, their children, their gardens, their health care, their food. Why would they want change? Well, if they didn't come for Oroville, one can understand that. If they came for Oroville ostensibly, how can we understand this?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was thinking the same charter, but to live in Oroville, big but, one
Yes.
must be a willing servitor of the divine consciousness, not of one's own desires, preferences, righteousness, dogmas, beliefs. It has to be very different. So we are not here for our own sake, not even. Mother wanted 50,000, and I heard this argument all the time from our Aurovilians that, but we have already villages. If we count all the villages, there will be 50,000, so we don't need more people. I heard this all the time, so it means they don't want to grow. And if we see how slowly Auroville grows through that entry group, disastrous group, that's as if specially they made it impossible for people to come, for the right people to come. It's very, very. I think.
I'm glad you have voiced this because it's exactly my feeling also. And I'm working so closely with the secretary. And I don't feel that people should be territorial. And these people, very often in the Greenbelt, are exactly that.
Yeah. Foresters. They love their forest and they don't want any other life but forest. But Auroville was not meant to be a forest. It was a city, where the forest plays its role. Yes, nature has to be there. But not only nature, exclusively nature. There must be more things.
Yes, exactly. And the forest is so vast already.
Yeah.
I think it's 36% of the city or something like that. That's a huge amount of forest. And the Crown Road itself is only 1/3 of 1%.
Yeah.
All right, we'll carry on. But I thank you for your wisdom on this, Vladimir. So we're going to continue now. where Sri Aurobindo says, "For all we have acquired soon loses worth. An old disvalued credit in time's bank." Well, a disvalued credit is a credit that has little or no value at all. Imperfections check drawn on the inconscient. Wow. The check of imperfection drawn on the inconscient. And I believe we have done the inconscient before. And in consequence, dogs every effort made. Well, an inconsequence is something that is trivial or without worth. Now, dogs here is truly in the sense of being hounded, or especially with hostile intent. So this inconsequence dogs every effort made. It follows every effort made. It tracks every effort made, just like a dog. And chaos waits on every cosmos form. Isn't that incredible? Chaos waits on every cosmos form. In each success, a seed of failure lurks. If someone lurks, they wait in ambush. They are unperceived and they wait. So in each success, a seed of failure lurks. He saw the doubtfulness of all things here, the incertitude of man's proud, confident thought. Well, incertitude is an absence of confidence. It's even doubt, even uncertainty. Now, Sri Aurobindo makes a comment on this line, the incertitude of man's proud, confident thought. And he says, uncertainty would mean that the thought was confident, but uncertain of itself, which would be a contradiction. Incertitude means that its truth is uncertain in spite of its proud confidence in itself. Letters on Savitri, 1936. So we have these lines that are so extraordinary. We have the lines that begin, "For all we have acquired soon loses worth, and it becomes an old disvalued credit in time's bank. It becomes a check that from imperfection is drawn on the inconscient. And then an inconsequence dogs every effort made, and chaos waits on every cosmos form. In each success, a seed of failure lurks." So Ashwapati sees what? He saw the doubtfulness of all things here, the incertitude of man's proud, confident thought, the transience of the achievements of his force. The transience are the impermanence, the fleeting or brief moments of his force. He is a thinking being in an unthinking world, an island in the sea of the unknown. Sri Aurobindo gives us a definition of the unknown, and I'll read it because it's not very long. The unknown is not the unknowable. It need not remain the unknown for us unless we choose ignorance or persist in our first limitations. For to all things that are not unknowable, all things in the universe. There, there correspond in that universe faculties which can take cognizance of them. And in man, the microcosm, these faculties are always existent and at a certain stage capable of development. We may choose not to develop them. Where they are partially developed, we may discourage and impose on them a kind of atrophy. But fundamentally, all possible knowledge is knowledge within the power of humanity. Very, very powerful. Does anyone have any questions on that passage? Okay, we'll go to the last one from the Upanishads. The unknown is that which is beyond the known. And though unknown is not unknowable, if we can enlarge our faculties or attain to others that we do not yet possess. So Sri Aurobindo's got a lot more to tell us. He is the smallest, trying to be great, an animal with some instincts of a god. His life, a story too common to be told. His deeds, a number summing up to naught. His consciousness, a torch lit to be quenched. To be quenched is to be extinguished. And then this famous line, his hope, a star above a cradle and grave. And yet, a greater destiny may be his. For the eternal spirit is his truth. He can recreate himself and all around and fashion new the world in which he lives. He, ignorant, is the knower beyond time. He is the self above nature, above fate. Have we done spirit? If
Yes,
not,
we did.
should...
We
Oh, we've
did.
done it. Okay, fine. This word self, have we done self, Vladimir?
Yes, we did, but we can do it again. Yeah, we did it before spirit.
Okay. So, can someone read self? Someone new?
I can read it.
Very good.
Just give me a second.
Sure.
Sri Aurobindo, the self is our self-existent being, from Essays on the Gita. In relation to the individual, the supreme is our true and highest self, that which ultimately we are in our essence, that of which we are in our manifested nature. A spiritual knowledge, moved to arrive at the true self in us, must reject, as the traditional way of knowledge rejects, all misleading appearances. It must discover that the body is not our self, our foundation of existence. It is the sensible form of the infinite, from the synthesis of yoga. Our highest...
This is a very important point. To discover that the body is not ourself. We always see ourselves as the body. We see it as our foundation of existence. And that's natural to humanity. But what Sri Aurobindo is telling us is that it is a sensible form of the infinite. Therefore, inherently, it is divine in progress, in manifestation, in evolving manifestation. Next one, Nisha.
From the synthesis of yoga, our highest self, which possesses and supports this universal power, the divine will, is not our ego self, not our personal nature. It is something transcendent and universal, of which these smaller things are only foam and flowing surface. From the life divine, the self is a fundamental aspect of Brahman, but with a certain stress on its impersonality. From the life divine, as soon as we become aware of the self, we are conscious of it as eternal, unborn, unembodied, uninvolved in its workings. It can be felt within the form of being, but also as enveloping it, as above it, surveying its embodiment from above, adhyaksha. It is omnipresent, the same in everything, infinite and pure and intangible forever. This self can be experienced as the self of the individual, the self of the thinker, doer, enjoyer. But even so, it always has this greater character. Its individuality is at the same time a vast universality, or very readily passes into that. And the next step to that is a sheer transcendence, or a complete and ineffable passing into the absolute. The self is that aspect of the Brahman in which it is intimately felt as at once individual, cosmic, transcendent of the universe. The realization of the self is the straight and swift way towards individual liberation, a static universality, a nature transcendence. At the same time, there is a realization of self in which it is felt not only sustaining and pervading and enveloping all things, but constituting everything and identified in a free identity with all its becomings in nature. Even so, freedom and impersonality are always the characters of the self. There is no appearance of subjection to the workings of its own power in the universe, such as the apparent subjection of the Purusha to Prakriti. To realize the self is to realize the eternal freedom of the spirit. From the letters on yoga, how can a spirit entity be enclosed in a material gland? So far as I know, the self or spirit is not enclosed in the body. Rather, the body is in the self. When we have the full experience of the self, we feel it as a wide consciousness in which the body is a very small thing, an adjunct, or a thing contained, not a container. From the letters on yoga, it is the soul, the inner being, that is the true self in everyone.
Well, this is so important, especially this passage when he speaks of the full experience of the self. And when we have it, we feel it as this consciousness in which the body is a very small thing, an adjunct or a thing contained, not a container. And yet, Mother speaks of the importance of physical exercise for the body, for keeping the body in the best health as we progress in our sadhana. But we still have to try to see the body as an adjunct, as a very small thing, as something contained within the self. So we'll carry on now. I think we have done nature before, very clearly. So now we see that Savitri, that Ashwapati, they speaks of him now. His soul retired from all that he had done. Now he is already a great yogi. He is already a sage, a seer. And he says, hushed was the futile din of human toil. Futile is pointless, unsuccessful, unimportant. And a din is it's a jumble of loud, often discordant sounds. So this din, this noise of human toil, forsaken, wheeled the circle of the days. In distance sank the crowded tramp of love, of life. So we could go to the next line. We have a few minutes left. What page is that? We were on 78. We need
79.
Yes, got it. The silence was his sole companion. Have we done silence, Vladimir?
I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Okay, so can someone read that? Someone new? Is someone there who can read it?
Naradji, I can read it.
Wonderful.
Silence, Sri Aurobindo. Silence is a state in which either there is no movement of the mind or vital, or else a great stillness which no surface movement can pierce or alter. Letters on Yoga. Silence is the absence of all motion of thought or other vibration of activity. Letters on Yoga. In complete silence, there are either no thoughts or thoughts come, but they are felt as something coming from outside and not disturbing the silence. Letters on Yoga. Silence of the mind, peace, or calm in the mind are three things that are very close together and bring each other. Letters on Yoga. Silence means freedom from thoughts and vital movements. When the whole consciousness is quite still. The Mother. Flowers and their messages. Glossary of philosophical and psychological terms. It is on the silence behind the cosmos that all the movement of the universe is supported. It is from the silence that the peace comes. When the peace deepens and deepens, it becomes more and more the silence. In a more outward sense, the word silence is applied to the condition in which there is no movement of thought or feeling, etc. Only a great stillness of the mind. Letters on Yoga.
Thank you. So we see that from the silence, the peace comes. And when the peace deepens and deepens, it becomes more and more silence. This is so important in our lives now, to develop this peace, to pray for it, to aspire for it. So we see now that Ashwapati is living impassively, that's without emotion, very calm, very serene. And he is immune. That means totally protected against these earthly hopes. Impassive, he lived immune from earthly hopes. A figure in the ineffable witness shrine, pacing the vast cathedral of his thoughts, under its arches dim with infinity, and heavenward brooding, So we have this term, ineffable. Sri Aurobindo says the ineffable is the immutable Purusha. So he is a figure in the ineffable witness shrine, pacing the vast cathedral of his thoughts. The cathedral here is something that resembles a cathedral, very large, imposing structure, great architectural beauty. So he is pacing this vast cathedral of his thoughts under its arches, dim with infinity, and heavenward brooding of invisible wings. Well, what do we understand here as brooding? Well, we know that when a hen broods over her eggs or her young chicks, she's covering them, protecting them. And I think here the second definition that we could have would be meditating or dwelling deeply on a thought. So it's a brooding of invisible wings, and it's heavenward. And next week we'll take up this call that is on Ashwapati, coming from the intangible heights. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful passage that we're in. Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, Naradji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.